As I welcome you to this fifth study in the Song of Solomon, I would like to invite you to share with me in reading chapter 2 verses 8 to 17. Again, I'm reading from the New International Version, which reads, "Listen, my beloved. Look, here he comes leaping across the mountains, bounding over the hills. My beloved is like a gazelle or a young stag. Look, there he stands behind our wall, gazing through the windows, peering through the lattice. My beloved spoke and said to me, 'Arise, my darling, my beautiful one, come with me. See, the winter is past, the rains are over and gone. Flowers appear on the earth, the season of singing has come, the cooing of doves is heard in our land. The fig tree forms its early fruit, the blossoming vines spread their fragrance. Arise, come, my darling, my beautiful one, come with me. My dove, in the clefts of the rock, in the hiding places on the mountainside, show me your face, let me hear your voice, for your voice is sweet and your face is lovely. Catch for us the foxes, the little foxes that ruin the vineyard, our vineyards that are in bloom. My beloved is mine and I am his. He browses among the lilies. Until the day breaks and the shadows flee, turn, my beloved, and be like a gazelle or a young stag on the rugged hills." I suggested in chapter 1 that the young couple to whom we are introduced in this cycle of songs met over the equivalent of their lunch break. Here the scene shifts to something more like a night out together, as the young man comes to collect his girlfriend from her home. And her anticipation springs out from the text. Just look at verses 8 and 9. The seconds seem to be an eternity as she listens for her boyfriend's approach. And when he comes into sight, her heart leaps. She seems to be aware of factors that might have made it difficult for him to come on this particular evening, but whatever stood in the way of their date, he has overcome them all, and here he is, just about to enter the gate. And now he's rung the bell, and desperate to see her, he's looking through the window to see if he can catch a first glimpse of her arrival at the front door. He's desperate to see her, and clearly as excited about the plans for the evening as she is herself. He also seems less tongue-tied than before, so he encourages his girlfriend to join him, not that there's any doubt of that, and he indulges in verses 10 to 13 in what has been described as possibly the most lyrical description of spring found anywhere in the world's greatest literature. Love, as it should, has freed his tongue. In Palestine, spring still arrives with a riot of colour, and everything seems to come alive, almost at once. Then as now, the opportunities that this offers for delightful evenings, where a secluded spot can be found, abound. If winter had restricted the possibilities as to their meeting, the time has now arrived when the young couple can uninhibitedly enjoy their friendship and deepen their relationship and longing for one another. The young man's description of spring is beautiful, but his words to his girlfriend are still more elevated. Words of endearment tumble out of his mouth in verse 13. Increasingly confident in her, he can speak freely, and so, with no fear of embarrassment and painful rejection, he addresses her as his darling and as incomparably beautiful to him. But verse 14 is particularly lovely. Understandably, there is still some residual timidity in the young woman. The step that the young couple are planning is an awesome one, and they both know this well. Adam and Eve hid themselves from one another in the Garden of Eden. They built walls between them. Ever since, it has required tenderness and care to bring any couple to the point of full and mutual disclosure, and that is reflected here. It is what the boy and girl both long for, but it requires time to grow in their openness to one another. So the boy with tenderness coaxes his girlfriend to lower her defences and to converse with him. the implication being that he is ready and willing to do the same. In doing so, he implies there will be that meeting of hearts so vital to a secure and loving relationship. A mere meeting of bodies may be followed by distaste and rejection. Sexual union as the ultimate act of mutual self-surrender and self-revelation is something quite else. It's not really clear who is speaking in verse 15. However, since us are mentioned, it is perhaps best to see this as something the young couple say together or to one another. But the reference to little foxes in verse 15 has puzzled almost every reader of this song. We must begin our explanation, therefore, with the fact that wild foxes are notoriously destructive. Nowhere, one imagines, is this more true than the moment when the early new growth of a grapevine begins to show. If this is the case, these two lovers are aware of predators that may threaten the early growth of their relationship. In answer to the young girl's shyness, there is a shared recognition that to move forward from this point in their relationship is going to require that they are alert to some real and potentially destructive dangers that are always lurking in the shadows. They do not tell us what they are. However, it's not difficult to imagine some that were in their minds. Since the context is one of increasing openness, there is perhaps a recognition that, while this is vital, it requires skill to negotiate to the place of mutual self-surrender without difficulty and damage. It may also be the case that they're looking beyond themselves. Puberty has given them an experience of their sexual identity, and they have relished its stirrings in their own relationship. They seem sensitive, however, to the fact that they need themselves to pace that friendship. But it's also possible that they recognise the danger that their newly discovered sexuality will mean, that they inevitably find they are aroused by others, and unless this is recognised and guarded carefully, it will destroy them. This song ends with the young couple happily enjoying one another's company and one another, and language lacks the urgency of the earlier part of the chapter. There, young love found hands everywhere. Here the language is no less erotic, but it is more restrained. The young woman is happy with her boyfriend's attention, but the accent seems to fall on simply enjoying being with him, and not wanting this moment to pass until the last possible moment. In verse 17, it is possible that it is dusk, not daybreak, that is intended. If so, she is hoping that they can remain in contented embrace until it is time to go home. She also supplies us with a reason in verse 16. In the light of their previous conversation, she is increasingly satisfied that the young man whose head lies on her breast is irrevocably hers, and as a consequence she can happily commit herself to him. This is a beautiful song, and its sublime words are appropriate to its exalted theme. Awesomely, because it describes something that is awesome. It traces this young couple's relationship beyond their early and highly sensual experience to something that builds upon it. They're getting to know one another, to reverse the curse of Eden, so that as transparency grows and interpersonal intimacy develops, their longing for one another are deepening and preparing them for the mutual self-surrender and exchange, which is God's intended and delightful end of our human sexuality.